Great. So what is your response to that criticism we just heard from the Pima County Democrats when it comes to single-family incomes being misogynistic?
Well, I think it's just proof positive of everything we've been saying for the past couple of years. The Democratic Party is now the party of the corporate class, of the elites. And the idea that anything that would be recognizable to a 20th century leftist is present today in the Democratic Party when they're saying things like it's oppression to have only one person in a family working it just beggars belief. It's absolutely amazing to watch.
It's really a privilege to do so, and it's funny how they call that now oppressive. So it's funny there, and as much as I love to rag on Democrats because, well, I mean, they're Democrats, I mean, look at their track record, but also Republicans as well. We saw actually a few weeks or a few months ago, the Republican Party trying to dunk on Biden. Of course, I can't stand Biden either, but the way they tried to attack him was you have all these jobs that are still sitting empty after the COVID pandemic, and of course the government officials who shut everything down. But the tack that the GOP tried to use was that women, mothers, need to go back into the office, and here they are just stuck at home raising their kid as if somehow that was a bad thing. And I'm like, hold up, Republicans, you're supposed to be on our side, upholding our morals and everything else. So it's quite interesting. So do you think that really it's both parties are almost a uniparty, and they're both, in essence, corporate shills at this point?
Right. I mean, this is the one thing in Washington that isn't controversial. The idea that we should have a more consumerist culture, we should ship more jobs overseas. GDP is the only thing that matters. And now that we have a new generation of Republicans and conservatives that are maybe asking questions about this, maybe they're thinking about the idea that there's more to an economy, there's more to a nation than just turning it into a giant shopping mall. You have people in both parties freaking out. On the Republican side, you'll have certain kinds of conservatives call you a socialist for saying we should have an economy that actually supports families. And on the Democratic side, you have a bunch of cat ladies who will act like The Handmaid's Tale is about to start any. If you have the audacity to suggest that maybe the apex of human being isn't slaving away in some corporate job all day, but actually raising a family that will love you, that you can love, and that'll, take care of you when you grow old.
I mean, especially these corporate. I mean, they don't protect us. They don't have our back. I mean, some of the most devastating social experiments really that we're facing right now as a nation, a lot of it paid for and brought to you by corporate America, unfortunately. So looking at it, we're seeing Democrats actually losing the hold that they once had on white working class Americans, also losing some hold in places like Texas of Hispanic middle class Americans. And even we saw President Trump, he raised the share of black voters that he got as well in the 2020 election. So do you think that the more populist type America First conservatives should really be capitalizing on this new realignment to create new coalitions moving forward?
Absolutely. There's an organization that I like a lot called American Compass, and they did this survey called the Home Building Survey a couple months ago, and they asked Americans, several thousand of them, how would you actually like to live your life? Is it one parent working, one parent at home taking care of the kids, two parents working and sending your kids to daycare? And it turns out there's super majorities in every single class of American life, except for the richest Americans, that would prefer some combination of one parent working and one parent taking care of the kids. This is normal. It's what everyday Americans want. It's what everyday Americans will vote to protect or vote to advance if there was a party that was willing to actually stand for it. And that's why I think we have such a great opportunity right now as conservatives to be authentically socially conservative, which doesn't mean just corporate tax cuts and war. It means actually supporting families, making sure that they're able to thrive in the middle class on, yes, one income, and protecting them from the cultural forces that exist in corporate America, in academia, and in Hollywood that seek to do great violence to the way they live their life.
Of course, a lot of us are left feeling in many ways, and correctly so, that our politicians, they don't represent our interests, even when we vote them into office, especially for us Republicans. I mean, how many times do we support one guy and then a couple of years later we go, look at that guy, he's a Benedict Arnold, a turncoat. And it's quite interesting to see actually right now playing out as well in Pennsylvania. There's a Democrat primary going on when it comes to U.S. Senator, to the race there. And it was actually a man named John Fetterman, and actually he was quite happy that about 50% or so of the money that he's been raising doesn't even come from his own state. And it's funny because back in the day, it actually used to be state legislatures that would actually pick the U.S. senator for their state. And of course, then they changed that about a century ago. So now people vote for their senator in the same way they vote for their local congressman. But it's quite strange now that we're seeing these big money guys happy that actually the money and support they're getting is out of their state from people who don't even live in their own districts. What does that tell you about the future of politics that we're seeing right now?
Well, I think it just shows how high the stakes have gotten, right? We have a clear contrast in this country. There's one party, one side of the aisle that wants to basically take away the ability for middle America to live out the American dream. They believe in things like critical race theory. They believe in things like transgender children. They believe in, globalizing their jobs, selling them away on free trade. They believe in open borders. The problem is that because the left has polarized so intensely over the last 10, 15, 20, 50 years, there is no choice but for every election to be high stakes, because the question that is now being posed is not, oh, should the tax rate be slightly higher or lower? Oh, should we have this welfare program? It's, do we have a country at all? Do we believe that families should exist at all? Should our children be able to live decent lives kind of unmolested by our pharmaceutical corporations? And so on. That's a fundamentally different status quo, and it's one that has much higher stakes. And so, frankly, I don't blame either side for getting involved in every state at all times for every race, because that's the stakes we're dealing with.